اللهم افتح علينا بنور العلم واحفظنا من ظلمات الوهم والجهل وحسن أخلاقنا بالحلم وانشر علينا من خزائن رحمتك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم اجعل هذا المجلس خالصا لوجهك الكريم. أما بعد. Now, alhamdulillah, it's continue with, it's been a little while, more than a month, it's been about 5 weeks. We continue with the book of the Sunnah, and I think we're on page 55. So we're on when someone relates a dream. Sorry? Huh? No. So we'll read a little bit more today, inshallah, speak less, because there's a lot of the book to get through. So when someone relates a dream. No.
When someone relates a dream to you, do not interpret it until either he asks you to or you ask him for his permission.
No. So the dream world is an entrance to your, in a lot of ways, your reality. You've got the world of like symbols. So the Shaykh, he will interpret the world of symbols for you. So not everyone has what we call the ahliyah. They have the capacity to interpret that world for you. So if they interpret in the wrong way, it can have repercussions. You go to somebody that you trust, somebody that's pious, somebody who's well versed in that field, just like you wouldn't go to a quack doctor or whatever and give you the wrong medication. The world of the spirit and the metaphysical realm, there's the people who deal with that realm. But one of the greatest things is that person is upright and pious and he follows the Sharia. That's why there's a great emphasis on not going to anybody that is somehow does some miraculous nature, as karamat, or takes jinn and does exorcisms, but he doesn't follow the Sharia. Then it doesn't matter what he does, because Fir'aun and so many that went before, it could be what we call istidraj, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he allows these things to happen on these people's hands. It's actually istidraj, and meaning it's slowly taking that person further and further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the dream world, as I said, is an opening into your reality. Some people can have a true dream, and that true dream could be the change that you're looking for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to see something that pushes you towards a change in direction in your life, which is what we call like a true dream. You can have a premonition. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had premonitions of what would happen in say 5 months, 6 months time. You see something, or there could be what we call a bishara, a glad tiding. So you see yourself doing something that may look evil, but when you look into the world of symbols, it's actually it's a sign for you, it's a glad tiding for you that you're going to be immersed in a lot of wealth soon, and you're going to have a lot of houses and assets and cars, or it could be a warning that you need to change that something needs to change in your life. So this is what we call the dream world, and that's why it's 146 as I remember of prophecy is left, is what we call the dream world, the metaphysical world. It exists. These moderns, they still don't understand the dream world. If you ask them what a dream is, they will just tell you, it's your brain, and a part of it, or it's sometimes the things that you've encountered in the day can be replayed in your head. That's not necessarily what we're talking about here, Tamam. When we talk about this is the ruh now traversing a different realm. That's why it's the younger brother of death. Why? Because your soul is temporarily released in a different way, not fully, partially released, and it enters a different world and a different realm. When you either eat or drink.
When you either eat or drink, always begin with Bismillah, in the name of God.
Because anything that doesn't begin with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember here you say Bismillah, tamam, it'll do the job because you said Bismillah, tamam, before beginning something. And the point isn't just the word Bismillah, the point is to start the thing that you're engaging in with the name of Allah, as in it's a form of remembrance of Allah. That other Shaykh, this thing, I can't do it except because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed me to do this. Or I don't have the power or the ability except because Allah has given me the power and ability to engage this act. Or I have only been blessed by Allah to be able to engage in this act before I start salah, before I pray Quran. So at each moment, you sort of seal the thing that you're doing and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless that thing by His name, by saying what we call the tasmiyah. That you bless and seal that thing, and the Prophet ﷺ is related to said that any act that doesn't begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, فَهُوَ أَبْتَرْ or أَقْطَعْ, that is cut, is severed, denied of blessings. Tamam?
And conclude with Alhamdulillah, praise be to God.
No, because بِنِعْمَتِهِ تَتِمُّ الصَّالِحَاتِ. As the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, that is only by virtue of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that good actions and rewards are come to a completion. As in, if it wasn't بِنِعْمَتِهِ, by His blessings, لَا تَتِمَّ الصَّالِحَاتِ, that good things cannot come to fruition, they cannot come to a completion or an end. So that's why you again, from what of the ala, the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will you deny? So at the beginning you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you remember that only this act will come to fruition by the virtue of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the end you remember the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allowed you to complete the act and it came to an end and completion. No.
Eat and drink using your right hand.
نعم هذا عند الحنفية هذا مستحب, and it's from the sunnahs. نعم لكن it's recommended for you to eat with your right hand. So the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam ate with his right hand now. So this is something that you should teach your children, and you should let them make sure that they eat with the right hand.
And when food is offered to you, say Allahumma barik lana fima razaqtana wa at'imna khayran minhu. Oh God, bless what you have given us and give us that which is yet better.
No. So you have good hope that, as the Sufiya say, that in the contemporary world that we live in, you hear a hadith of zuhud and, renouncing the world. Hada maqam is a station, and it's a hard station in the world that we live in. So everywhere you go, there's there's nice cakes and there's coffee shops, and everywhere you go, it's hard. You want to take your family out, where are you going to go? You're not going to sit in the desert for an hour. You're going to take a picnic to the park, and you're going to eat. So some of the Sufiya, they have this maxim that ul kharuf, that eat a whole sheep, is literally translated as this. Ul meaning eat, kharuf, washkur ala or uluf. But send gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also show thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the thousands. As in, eat, but at the same time show multiple or immense gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the food that you've been given. Because trust me, we've seen people who have literally nothing, as in they live on scraps, or they struggle to make ends meet. So the West, and there is a great problem coming to this community in the West, especially to the British Isles. When you look at just the other day, when it cost us about, now with Brexit, £7 billion to import food from outside the UK, it means that there will be a lot of problems happening to us as a community. And one of the ways that Allah takes away these blessings is when you don't show gratitude upon the blessings that you've received by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Shaykh Sayyid Ramadan al-Bhuti says that his father, whenever they used to eat and they would have, different types of food, he would always say to him, look, we've got all these different types of food, but where did they come from? It came from Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us about this food, so say, be thankful for the food that you have. And these are lessons, what we call real life lessons, that were ingrained in the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you have to remember, this is theory. This is theory, me talking, you listening, you coming here, we just sat here, but the real practice is what? It's on the outside, sir. It's when you're living life really, when you're going to work, when you're at home, when you're dealing with your family. This is the real life. This is when have these meanings been really implanted within the depths of your soul. And that's the work that every single one of us have to do. And how to do that from getting there to there is what we call suluk, traversing the path. That's all it is. It's not airy-fairy. People think, oh, it's so airy. It's nothing to do with airy-fairy. All it is, you could say, is that, how you have those leadership programs where a guy comes and he tells you That's all it is. It's Islamic, mentoring and leadership. That how do I get? I'm right now erratic. I can't implement what I've listened to. So I've listened to these durus, but I can't implement them in my life. So I'm erratic. I'm not what we call upright. I can't manage to. I don't know how to manage my affairs in a way, or my time, or my money, or my wealth, or my family life, or my personal and social responsibilities, or my own self, as I'm mentally ill, so I can't manage my own metaphysical side of myself. Last thing, what you need is to traverse the path and realize how to get from this stage to that stage to that stage until you become what? Mastery of the self. That's what the Prophet ﷺ know. He had bashariya, he had human-like qualities, but he had overcome his human-like qualities. That's why he was blessed to be the greatest of all men, because he had mastered his own bashariya, his own humanness. So here we have what? Yet you have, oh God bless what you have given us, and give us to eat that which is yet better, if it be milk. So specifically when you drink milk, this is the dua to make zidna minhu, that give us what? An increase of the milk that we have. I mean, we drink a lot more things than milk nowadays. Tamam, is oat milk or soya milk, whatever it is. As in, we have to really be grateful. And we have so much blessings in our life, and even then, the Asian community is, mashallah, is the most, we have so much, but we're still greedy for more. Not only are we greedy for more, we don't want goodness to happen to anybody else as well. So we have everything, and then on top of that, we also don't want that good to happen to somebody else. Instead, the good that you have should be, one of the ways of showing gratitude is to share it with people. Is to give portions of it to your children or to your siblings, if they're older, they're living in different, or your parents, your community, your neighbors, is to share the good that comes on your hand, because you're just the vehicle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed these blessings with you, and then now He's seeing what you're going to do with those blessings that happen. Are you going to just like keep them all for yourself? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're someone who's not upright, and He gives you all these things, and you notice, everything you desire, it happens, then the people of Allah say that you should fear, because here it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala la yubali, He doesn't care about you one bit. That you're not in trials and you're not in tribulations, but you're not upright at the same time. As in, you're not someone who's pious as well at the same time, and you have money and wealth and all the things that you want happen for you. At this moment, you should be the most worried out of everybody. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they say, has a siyasa, He has a type of politics with His creation, which is that those people, He gives you the rope, He gives you everything, and He goes, in an instant, He'll take it away from you. And the most, like when you're eating and chilling on a beach, He'll take your soul away at the most random of times, because you won't be prepared for what's coming. That's why the people of Allah, they may not have many things, and they may be in trials and tribulations, but they say hada ta'deeb, that this is a way of what? Cultivating them and teaching them and educating them. And through these mihan, through these trials, come like hope, love, tahbeeb, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end what? He loves that person. As in, so he's sort of creating him into something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end will love. So your trials and tribulations come, and you go through all these sort of, in the end what? You become a better person. You become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that deep is one thing, cultivation of the person by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when his parents passed away, and his uncle passed away, and his wife passed away, and he grew up as an orphan. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why some of the people of Allah say that this is Allah showing that only Allah is the one who is responsible for the cultivation and education and knowledge of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody else. Only Allah. No man can say that his father taught him, or his uncle taught him, or he's the product of his mother, or he's the product of his community. Like only Allah. That this ilm came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the one who took responsibility, as He says, for ahsana ta'deebi, that He did me well, he gave me good education, He raised me well. So these are the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it starts with what? Following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Says wash your hand now.
Wash your hands before and after eating. Eat small morsels.
Washing your hands is from what we call wudu. So the wudu, there's barakah in washing your hands before and after eating, and it's also called a type of wudu. That's why the fuqaha say washing your hands after eating, that water is also considered used, mustaqmal, just like the water that you use in wudu itself. Washing your hands after and before eating, the water that comes after that off your hands once you've done that is also considered used, what we call mustaqmal in fiqh. No.
Chew thoroughly and do not extend your hand to more food before you have swallowed what is already in your mouth.
And take your time, do you know what I mean? As in, like, honestly, I'm considered a slow eater, right? Even though I eat fast. I mean, when I eat fast, my jaw starts hurting, like, you know, all this, and there's people who eat faster than me and literally will finish a whole meal and burgers. I've sat with people, literally, I'm there, I'm still having the chips, and the guy's finished his chips and his burger, and he's on the second one, and I'm just like, slow down, it's like, chill out, and take your time, there's no rush. The mom saved the food, the Prophet some 40 times, you know, used to chew his food, used to, I said, what we call composure, sakina, waqar, you know, don't lose it. It's like, you know, you've got food in front of you, it's not going anywhere. So I to teach your kids also, the food's not going anywhere, take your time. And what it's on the sunnah also to do what? Talk when you're eating, as in socialize when you're eating. You know, don't focus on the food, focus on each other when you and discuss and talk about good things while you're eating. Tamam? No.
Eat from near the sides of the bowl and not from the middle, for the middle is where the barakah descends. If you drop a morsel of food, clean and then eat it, and do not leave it for the devil. Lick your fingers and clean the bowl after you have finished. Use your index, middle finger and thumb in eating. You can use the remaining fingers whenever you need to, for instance when eating rice.
No, here is how you eat. Now the sunnah of the Prophet is well known, how he ate with his fingers, and obviously a lot of the mashaykh even now, they do eat with knife and forks, and you know, I've seen it myself, spoons, so you know, it's not necessarily, or you can't use cutlery, or you can't do this. It's a level of, you know, how much you want to sort of be stringent in following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The main thing when eating food is to have humility, is to not eat it with arrogance, and not sit with the posture of the arrogant people. You know, not eat it like as if like, you know, this stuff is mine and look at me and I'm filling, you know, my greed, I'm fulfilling everything. You know, like have a bit of adab when you're eating food. You mentioned the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you eat it with composure, you keep your mouth closed while you're eating, you talk with people, you don't show that you're greedy, so you eat from what's near you, you don't eat, you know, you don't look for the food, you don't look at other people at what they're eating, you have what we call etiquettes of the guest. So when other people are eating, you carry on eating until they finish, you serve other people. So, these are all etiquettes that are sort of obvious in a lot of ways as well. So the Prophet is teaching you how to be what? Human. It's not like, don't be an animal. They're like animals or cattle. No, actually, they're more astray than cattle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hey, don't be a cattle, be a human. So the Prophet is what? He's Afdal al-Bashar, as we mentioned, he's the best of all human. And he's telling you how to be a human being, tamam, and how to keep, don't release your carnal desires in front of everyone, because it's not a good trait to have. No.
When you eat with others, partake of what is immediately before you, except when eating fruit. Do not keep looking at other people who are eating. Make appropriate conversation, and do not speak with food in your mouth. If you find it necessary to spit or blow your nose, turn your head away from them or go somewhere else where you can do it. Whenever you eat at someone's house, praise them and praise for their felicity.
No, praise them.
Praise them and pray for their felicity. When you have finished eating, say, Alhamdulillah, Allahumma at'amtani tayyidan fasta'milni salihan. Alhamdulillah alladhi أطعمني هذا الطعام ورزقنيه من غير حول مني ولا قوة. Praise be God, O God, you have fed me on goodness, therefore use me in goodness. Praise be God who fed me with neither ability nor power on my part.
No. If food is what we do very little in the modern world to make our own food. You know, all literally what we do is we earn the meal, buy the bread and we eat it. There's such a massive process involved making food, from the person who puts his energy and he sows the seed and he harvests that wheat, and people that grind the wheat and then they filter it and then they take it and then they bake it and then they make it and then they pack it and then they deliver it and then it ends up in front of you. These are all the meanings that you should bring to mind when you eat that thing. Then you ain't gonna leave that crust, do you understand? And you're not gonna leave that pizza crust at the end of it. Why? Because you have that aleem, and you have respect for what you're about to eat, and you realize the amount of effort that's gone to make that thing in front of you. But when you have too much, and it happens with children as well, so if you have a child and you put loads and loads of toys in front of him, he becomes spoiled. He's not gonna play with any of it. And when you give him nothing and he has one toy, lo and behold, he starts playing with that toy that he's never played with, and even if it's rubbish, he'll start building a tower out of nothing. So sometimes with food, less is more. The more you have, the more spoiled you become. That's why your pantries need to be less, not more. And the more you give, more will come to you likewise. The more you share with people, trust me, you will never be out of food ever. But you have to create also a community where you share food as well. So these things are slowly being eroded, and people are becoming more and more self-centered in that. Young generations now, they hardly call friends over to eat or family over to eat. It hardly happens anymore, because everyone's busy in their own lives. So I go work 9 to 5, then I'm with my family, and then we're going to go out to eat, and then on the weekend we're going Lake District, and then I haven't got any time, and then maybe I can fit you in next month on Saturday evening at 8 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. if you're free. That's not how it should be, Tamam. You should be able to turn up at your friend's house anytime and say, you know what, I've come. Khalas, you open and you serve. You don't have to go to trouble. La takalluf. There's no takalluf. Without any takalluf. From Islam and Tasawwuf is bidun takalluf. Without any whatever you have, you put in front of your guest. Whatever it is, dates, water, biscuits, whatever it is, bidun takalluf. You shouldn't expect to have the feast, and you shouldn't go out and go over and above what you can afford, but you put whatever you have in front. Because the point isn't that you need to be next level and you need to show off. The point is that the thing itself happens, that there's this real love that happens between a community, that you could turn up. That's how it used to be back in the day. But now it hardly happens. Nobody comes to your house, neither are you ever invited to other people's house. And this was striking here, because in the Arab world it still exists. They're very, very good at hospitality. Very good at hospitality. You turn up and you don't eat at their house, that's seen as a really bad thing. As in, they will feed you till the brim. Literally, you will have coffee and tea and fruit and dates and food, and it'll keep coming and coming and coming. And they do not find it at all tiresome at all. That you've burdened them at all. They actually see it as when guests come, they come with their own risk. As in, the food that they eat, it was their risk anyway. And when they leave with all the trials and tribulations, bala of the house. That's why they love feeding guests. They don't have this self-centered approach that always, I ain't got it, I'm going to go out and buy meat, oh God, I'm going to cook. They see it as an honor, as a sharaf, that this guy is eating his food anyway, and then when he leaves, he's going to leave all the trials and tribulations from my house anyway. So they see it as a real honor to serve guests. And so you should serve anybody and everybody. No.
The one who says this is forgiven his sins. Do not be obliged to use sauce with every kind of food.
Yeah, so basically don't use ketchup and mayo and everything, and we can't eat. Sorry, I'm like that as well. So you grow up with certain habits, then they're hard to change them out. So we call idam, as the Prophet. So the best of condiments is vinegar. So the Prophet used to have vinegar as a condiment. That was like a sauce or a condiment that they would use. So nowadays you have a variety of condiments that you can use around this sauce and that sauce. It's a sign of don't go OTT with all these condiments. Why? Because the more you attach yourself to food, the harder it becomes to then renounce yourself from that. You become attached to it too much. This burger, that burger, this steak, this shop, that shop. That's all you tend up thinking about. That's why I say less is always more with food.
And never criticize food, however bad it is. Do not make good and pleasurable food your prime concern, otherwise you will be one of those about whom the Messenger of God ﷺ said, "The worst people of my nation are those who eat luxurious food and their bodies grow on it. Their concern lies only in the different kinds of food and clothing, and they speak pretentiously."
Yeah, I said if there was a more clear hadith of the situation a lot of us find ourselves in, it's this hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ says, the worst people of my nation are those who eat luxurious food. And trust me, the most basic foods that we eat would be considered luxurious if compared to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Like you could say, a bowl of porridge with something in it would be maybe considered luxurious into the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Their staple was like, dates, water, milk, and sometimes, meat is considered luxury to them because they're not going to go and slaughter loads and loads of their animals because they need those animals, or milk or pasture or whatever. They ride on their camels. They're not going to slaughter loads of camels. It's a one in a while, on Eid al-Adha or here and there, or if a guest comes. But it's not going to be all the time, because it provides also a source of food for them and income. But now we can't live without what? We can't live without chicken. We can't live without 3 meals a day. And we have. It's this sort of, a total. We've been consumed by it, and we've eaten the pill, the modern pill, which has been sold to us that you need to eat this stuff, and eating this stuff makes you feel a certain way. That's what he's trying to say. Don't make your feelings attached to the food that you eat. Don't connect yourself to the food that you eat, whether you have tea or coffee forget about it. Connect yourself to the awrad that you do in the morning. Connect yourself to the salah that you should be praying and the Quran that you should be reciting, not the food that you're eating. That's why some people say to me, as in, I'm not fit, don't get me wrong, but I said to someone, what it is, if I eat a lot one day, the next day I probably won't eat that much. Why? Because, class, yesterday was a bad day, today's a less than that. So it's not that I have to have 3 meals every single day, and today I've missed a meal, so then I feel really upset about it. Class, today you've not had a meal in the evening, forget about it. Tomorrow you eat, breakfast, and do not connect yourself and make your life revolve around the food that you eat. Tamam? So it's a bit of we want to eat good food, and even today I was discussing with someone about having enterprises where we, forget, we need to forget about like the imported stuff, the rubbish that's coming. We need more wholesome food, that's good food, that's pure food, because remember, you are just a product of what you eat. That whatever seed that the flesh, so when you have your flesh, a fiqhi qaida principle is that the saliva is generated from the flesh. So an animal that is najis, impure, its saliva is likewise impure. Just so a dog whose flesh is impure, that you can't eat its saliva is impure. That's why the fuqaha say you need to be careful about what you eat because you become that thing that you eat. And that's why the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajmain were very careful about what they ate. Because they knew that eating the wrong thing isn't going to generate anything good within me. It's going to generate all the wrong things. It's going to be producing in me evil thoughts. It's going to be producing in me caprice and desire. So someone will say, I can't, I need to get married, I know this, I've got that problem, I can't. It's probably the rubbish that you're eating. Just yesterday, I watched a documentary on iPlayer, the food one. I don't know if anyone's seen it. And he talks about the harms of aspartame. Aspartame is a sweetener. That's in Coke and Pepsi and fizzy drinks and loads of foods. And most of the independent trials done on this show that it produces or can be a cause of cancer. Aspartame. So, and then there was one on emulsifiers, and similarly, likewise, that these two things are in the majority of processed foods that we eat. So as Muslims, if you claim to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we're eating all this junk, and then we complain that, so and so's got cancer, and this has happened, that's happened. But the thing is, the choices that we made in the beginning were all wrong. And not only that, you feed this stuff to what? Our children eat it. So in Jordan, for example, there's a real pandemic of cancer in children because you should see the amount of junk that they eat, that the sweets that they eat, that for jokes, literally, they will go to the shop and then, this is 5p and 10p like we used to do back in the day. Nowadays, there's no penny sweets, but we used to eat a lot of penny sweets, but it's junk. It's not going to produce anything with you. All it's going to do is cause you illness, physical illness, and metaphysical illness. It will produce within you shahwa and desire like nothing. As in, you will be creating a monster within inside. Then you won't be able to wake up for tahajjud. Then you won't be able to pray salah. Then you won't be able to concentrate. Then you won't have the tawfiq of coming to a class and listening and sitting with the mashayikh. Then you'll be sinning. And it's all because of the food that you're taking in. So the Prophet said, calm down. Watch the food that you eat and just relax a little bit. Tamam, you don't need to fill yourself up and eat whatever you see in front of you like cattle do. No. The concern lies only in the different kinds of food and clothing. Not only is it food, but it's likewise clothing. So when you see people concerned with these two things, فَلَا تَجْلِسُوهُ, don't sit with them, don't be with them, and don't connect with these types of people now.
Ali, may God ennoble his face, has said, the one whose main concern is what enters his belly is as valuable as that which comes out of it. Strive to only allow illicit, halal food to enter your stomach, for the heart of the one who eats halal food for 40 days becomes illuminated, and the well springs of wisdom flow from his tongue. God honors him with renunciation of the world, his inward becomes clear, and his behavior towards his Lord excellent.
No, as we mentioned before, that the physical now has an impact on your spiritual and metaphysical. The both are connected. So don't think the things and the decisions that you make in the physical world don't affect your metaphysical being. If they do affect your metaphysical reality, that's why the food that you eat and the behaviors that you engage in the physical world, they will affect your metaphysical reality, as in the inner. That's why the heart becomes blackened when you sin. It's a sin, it's a physical thing that you've done, if it's a physical sin, but it blackens the within. And so what happens is the light within you becomes darker and darker and darker. So when you repent and you engage in the halal and the good, you start becoming lighter and lighter and lighter, as in the inside of you becomes brighter, your heart becomes to enjoy this light. And then what happens is, regardless of the situation you find yourself in life, you will always have a contentment. And this is a ladha, a sweetness that nobody can describe for you ever. That's why Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani says, the student of Imam Abu Hanifa says, if the people or the muluk, they knew what we were experiencing, they would fight us for it. As in, it's a ladha that can't be described, it's a sweetness that can't be described. It's something that's indescribable unless you have it too. And contentment is not something simple. If you look at most people who suffer with depression, it's because they have some type of discontentment in their life. Either they have no money and they're worried about poverty, either they have no job and status and they want better status, or they're worried about, if they've got issues at home. And when you have contentment, because what real wealth is what? Gina nafs, it's our contentment of the self. Like, khalas, I am what I am, and I'm happy with my Lord, and my Lord is happy with me. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the companions as what? Radiallahu anhum wa radu an. That Allah is content and pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. Khalas, that's the last maqam now. There is nothing after that. We're happy whatever Allah does with us, and we're happy with Allah, and Allah is happy with us. Khalas. No. God honors him. No.
God honors him with renunciation of the world, his inward becomes clear, and his behavior towards his Lord excellent. The one who eats suspect and prohibited things becomes the opposite of all this. Beware of eating excessively and frequently eating to satiate you. For even if it be from halal foods, it will still be the beginning of many evils. It results in hardening of the heart, loss of perspicacity, confused thinking, laziness in worship, and other things. The way to be moderate is to stop eating while still desiring to eat, and not to start eating until you really want food. The sign that yours is a real desire is that you desire any kind of food. When you drink water, sip it and do not pour it down. Stop to breathe 3 times while drinking. Do not breathe into the cup, neither drink where it is cracked, nor standing up, nor from the mouth of a water skin. If you find no container to drink from, if you find no container, drink from your hand. After you have finished, say, Alhamdulillahi alladhi ja'alahu adhaban furatan birahmatihi wa lam yaj'alhu milhan ujajan bi dhunubina. Praise be God who made it sweet and limpid through his mercy and not salty and bitter through our sins.
Again, he's going to finish up with food. Is our whole relation with food and our attitude towards food in reality needs to change. As a community and as a society, it's not what it should be, and there has to be a real discourse around these things. Sometimes we really miss the point. Is that there's so many of us, and we have so many skills, and we have so much money, but we really have very little sort of substitutes. So all this stuff we discussed over and over and again, and with food, you probably, if someone else will discuss it in another class, and you hear a hadith about it. The thing is, there has to be a solution, and the solution is not going to come from the businessmen because they're trying to make money. They're not going to stop selling all this stuff because it makes money. The solution comes from your choices. When you start making healthier choices and you want different things, lo and behold, other people will start to provide it because there are now people who want those things. So you have to start using your money and choosing. If you're going to eat meat, for example, and you eat it, every single week, then don't eat it every single week. Eat it every 2 weeks, but use that money to buy better quality meat or something that's 100% that is halal and it's been reared in a tayyib way, in a pure way, in an organic manner, for example, because you will notice the differences in your life and all this stuff with regards to this is sort of assuming that the food is good in itself, and he's telling you not to eat too much of the good food. Never mind food that isn't even good, that's not even is full of rubbish. So again, our attitude to food must change. And it's only when like-minded people get together that you can start engaging in these what we call enterprises and projects where you start to think differently.
When you approach your wife sexually, say Bismillah, Allahumma jannibna shaytan wa jannibish shaytana ma razaqtana. In the name of God, O God, keep Satan away from us and from that offspring that you give us. Keep yourself and wife covered and behave quietly and serenely. When you feel near to your orgasm, recite within yourself without moving your tongue, وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ مِنَ الْمَاءِ بَشَرًا. He it is who created man out of water.
No. So this is slightly bewildering if you actually think about it. That the Prophet ﷺ, he never left anything at all to the minutest of details, even to relations with one's spouse. There is advice on how to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even in those instances. That's why really the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the miftah, the key to all goodness. And that's why from the Mashaykh would say that, I'm bewildered at those who have the key to the wilayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't use it. And that's the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the remembrance of Allah in its more generic sort of meaning, is that even at every moment you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in those moments that you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because بِنِعْمَتِهِ تَتِمُّ الصَّالِحَاتِ, it's His blessings that will allow you to have the child. And that's why you can't compartmentalize your life. You can't do that. You can't behave when it comes to your spouse in a way where, oh well, I'm in the masjid now, so I can do what I want, I can talk to her I want, and we can. That, Islam has to permeate all beings of your life, whether you're ill, whether you're happy, whether you're poor, whatever you're doing, whether you're studying, working, eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, it permeates us do. That, you know what, I'm in the class now, so I'm going to behave, and then as soon as I get out of the class, it's like there's this different side of you. That's not you being real now. There is no real muraqabah or vigilance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the du'as are first and foremost, you must memorize these du'as and use them. So if there's a class, most people struggle, but this is where the hard work lies, is come to a class, memorize the du'as, and then implement them. Hada tasawwuf. This is tasawwuf. Most people don't want to feel like this is tasawwuf because it's not exciting. But this is tasawwuf. That you come into the class, memorizing the dua, and then reading it to the Shaykh, and then implementing that dua. This is Ainul Tasawwuf. This is the locus and the center of tasawwuf because it involves implementation. It involves you learning and then practicing what you've learned, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open other doors for you. See what there's a pandemic now in the Muslim world is it what making everything academic, is having an academic discourse about Islam. So you've got people on YouTube who are discussing so and so and Etiquette and this guy and the philosophy of this and women and that and this and that, and everything becomes this philosophical debate. Who's right and what's right, and Allah said this in the Quran and the Prophet Hadith and whatever. It's got its place, but the majority of your life shouldn't be that. The majority of a normal Muslim person should be engaging in the day-to-day life and implementing these prophetic qualities and sunnahs in our life. It shouldn't be that. That debate normally is the debate of the scholars, and they have their argumentation. For people like us, it should be about implementing the realities in our lives, not wasting your time on YouTube listening at this and that guy's better than this and he's the lion of the Ahlul Sunnah because he debates really well. Khalas, but we still don't know the du'as of entering into toilet and coming out of the toilet. What difference does it make to us if he's the lion of the Ahlul Sunnah, you're the weasel of the Ahlul Sunnah? It doesn't make any difference to us, does it? Because in the end it's all shahwa, it's all caprice, that's all it is. Because you think you know him and you related to his group and he somehow represents you, that because he's the lion, then you somehow are also the lion because you're connected to that guy somehow. It makes no difference to you. You need to follow the footsteps and learn your du'as and learn how to pray Quran, and it doesn't make any difference. So don't focus on other people. Focus, someone said to you in business, if you want to be successful, you need to have little wins. Every day you need to think to yourself, what are the little wins that I've done in life? Similarly, you could say that this is what it is. Every single day you have what? Little wins. Khalas, I've done this dua today, I managed to recite Quran today, I managed to eat less today, I managed to eat better today, I managed to give sadaqah today. These little wins, lo and behold, after a whole year, month, week, many little wins accumulates to a big win. But you know what? You've actually changed your whole life. That's why the Prophet ﷺ and the people of Allah, they tell you to not focus too ahead. What we call tul al-amal. Don't focus too ahead. Don't think, you know what, in 6 months' time, what am I going to do as a job? And in 12 months' time, and someone said to me, I need to work so I can have a house, so I can leave it for my children. I was just like, oh God, I was like, but you don't even know what's going to happen to your children and what's going to happen in the future. Think about the here and now. Khalas, in the morning, you think about the evening, in the evening, the next day, that's it. If you live a life like that, you'll be content. Now, regarding whether to marry or not.
Regarding whether to marry or not, the best choice for a worshipper is that which is safer from the religious point of view, better for his heart, and more conducive to collected thinking. It is extremely reprehensible for those who are not married to think about women in a manner which increases their desire for them. Anyone thus afflicted and unable to control it with acts of worship must get married. If he is unable to, let him fast, for this diminishes desire.
Now here, I think in the Shafi school, there's a debate whether it's better to not get married and, sort of focus on worship and, becoming like a scholar and all that type of stuff, and not getting married, or getting married and not doing that. So I think the Shafis give a precedent to not getting married and engaging in worship and being a Zahid and a scholar like Imam al-Nawawi and others. And in our school, in the Hanafi school, it's better to get married. As in, they don't give precedence to not getting married and giving yourself and dedicating yourself to the worship of Allah and those types of things. In our school, in all instances, it's better to get married, tamam. Unless you feel that if you were going to get married, that you won't be able to fulfill the rights of your wife, or in multiple ways, not just in financial ways, in all ways, tamam. But in general, it's better to get married, because Prophet ﷺ said that this is his sunnah, and the one who moves away from his sunnah, then he's not from me. As the Prophet ﷺ said, no, so we take that literally here. So he says that, no, so here there's another sin what we have is what we call lust, is not to have lustful thoughts about things and people and objects. These are one of the sins of the heart. When you go to the lavatory,
when you go to the lavatory for either of the excretory functions, wear your sandals, put something on your head, put your left foot forward as you enter and your right foot as you exit. Say before entering, Bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khabathi wal-khaba'ith. In the name of God, O God, I seek your protection from male and female demons. And as you come out, غفرانك الحمد لله الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافني. I seek your forgiveness, praise be God who removed harm from me and made me healthy. Do not invoke God there except in your heart. Do not take in with you anything on which his name is written out of reverence for him. Do not act frivolously and speak only when necessary.
No, so these are all fiqh rulings that you learn in fiqh, inshallah. We're not going to go into detail right now.
Raise your clothes only to the extent of protecting them from getting soiled. Keep well away from anybody's sight, and let neither your sound nor smell be noticed. Neither face the qibla nor turn your back to it. This may be difficult in some buildings when it is allowed because of the hardship that would result. Do not urinate in stagnant water, even if there be a large quantity of it, except when this is unavoidable, nor on solid ground, nor against the wind. This is for protection against getting soiled with urine, which leads to most of the grave's torment. So clean yourself from it thoroughly, but without reaching the stage of obsessiveness.
No, I think there's an emphasis on cleanliness, isn't there? You don't want to go to the lavatory or toilet and splash urine all over yourself. You're going to pray in those clothes, you need to worship Allah in those clothes. So there's hygiene and cleanliness is important. So you need to be very careful. You don't go to the loo in Trafford Centre and just, you need to be careful what you sit on. You need to make sure all this stuff is clean. So you have to be careful with the clothes that you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with, likewise. No.
This is helped by coughing and emptying the privates by gently massaging its undersurface. Clean your anal region with stones, then water.
This is in fiqh likewise. We have two things, istibra and istinja. Istibra is to make any leftover urine come out. This is what called istibra. This is like wajib for you to do. Istinja isn't wajib. Istinja is a sunnah. Istibra is wajib. Why? Because if urine was to come out after having made wudu, your wudu would be broken or nullified. So for males, you cough or you sort of stamp or other ways to make sure that any excess urine has come out. And some people might find it embarrassing, but la haya fil ilm. There's no shyness in learning knowledge. So this has to come out. Similarly, this is wajib for you to do. So after you go to the toilet, you must wait for a little bit and make sure that all urine has exited before you actually perform istinja and wudu.
Clean your anal region with stones, then water. If only one of them is to be used, then water is better.
No, so this is istinja. So before was istibra, this is istinja.
Begin with the frontal region when using water and the anal region when using stones. Say afterward, Allahumma hassin farji min al-fawahish wa tahir qalbi min al-nifaq. O God, guard my sexual organs against depravity and purify my heart from hypocrisy. Use your right hand in everything except in removing defilement and dirt. Always put your right foot forward except in entering dirty places when you should enter with the left. When you sneeze, lower your voice cover your mouth and say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Hey, praise be God, Lord of the worlds.
No, so you'd be saying a lot if you have hay fever at the moment. So no.
Spit only to your left or near to your left foot. Shut the water skin's mouth, cover all vessels, and shut the house's door, especially before going to sleep or going out. Do not go to sleep until you have put out or covered all flames in the house, such as lamps and so forth. If you find a vessel uncovered in the morning or a water skin open, do not drink water from them, but only use it in things for which defiled water can be used, regardless of it being clean, for its use is dangerous. Shaykh Ibn Arabi said in the Futuhat that in every year there is an unknown night in which sickness descends, sicknesses descend, which find no uncovered vessel, no open water skin, but that they enter therein. This is why the Messenger of God ﷺ advised people to close their water skins and cover their vessels. If you find nothing to cover a vessel with, put a twig on it and say the name of God, and place your trust in Him, for indeed God loves those who trust Him.
No. So these are all our adab and etiquettes of living. Some of these things obviously they're different in our lives. So instead of putting your flames out, switch your lights off of your house, you don't want to waste electricity. Similar things. I mean, you look after your house, you look after the space that you live in. And the last bit, because even if these ahadith may not be, fully authentic or to the, really, really strong, they're what we call adab of the salihin, they're like sort of the mannerisms of the pious in itself. And those things can be followed in and themselves. If you see, for example, your father doing something, and he knows he's a pious man, khalas, you can follow, and there's evidence likewise, even though it may be weak, and the ulama have followed and accepted this and corroborated this, and it was their practice, then you can follow these things. So some people may come to you and say, oh, there's no evidence for this, and there's nothing for that. But the evidence is in the practice of the ulama. As in the fact that they practiced this and corroborated it is enough evidence for us in a lot of respects, tamam. That's why we have in the Hanafi school, for example, we have what we call tawarus, which is an act that's been passed down generation by generation. There's no sanad for it, there's no hadith for it per se, but this act was done in a generation and passed down to the next generation, and they did it and it was passed down to the next generation. So even if you come now and say there's a hadith that says X, Y, and Z, that the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands in prayer, we say, khalas, that's fair enough, but we have a tabaqa, a whole generation that did one thing, and then they passed it down and they did a whole different thing, the same thing. And so we have this act that's from what we call jeel ba'da jeel, or generation after generation. You only have one person and one person and one person chain, what we call khabar ahad, a solitary chain. So for example in Bukhari there could be a hadith that goes against something that we do as the Hanafis or another madhab, but you telling me this chain did, one person said this, said this, said this, but I'm telling you a whole generation, a whole town, a whole city was doing one thing. They never raised their hands in prayer. And and after them, all of the tabi'een and the people after them, they never raised their hands in prayer. And they never said Ameen loudly. And that was passed down to the next generation. And you're telling me one hadith, so that our ulama say, well, that's stronger than the hadith. Because you're telling me one person on one person by one person. I'm telling you thousands on thousands, but who took from thousands, who took from thousands. And so if the Prophet said Ameen loudly, so some of them would have said it loudly, but we never saw anyone say it loudly. It's just an example. Obviously the Shafis would say we have other evidences and whatever. So similarly here, we have our ulama in tasawwuf. Remember, this is a tasawwuf matter. So in tasawwuf, you could see that there could be a practice that is spiritual. This practice, there's a reason for it. So the ulama of a certain generation may see that doing X, Y, and Z has a special benefit in what we call tarbiyah, or cultivation of the soul. This doesn't necessarily mean that it has to always be done, but the ulama could concur that this needs to carry on because this benefit still exists. It could be that this practice is done, but the ulama of this generation see, people of tasawwuf see, that this is not having the benefit or the desired benefit that it had in the previous time. So then they change that. Even though people in the early period did that, because the natija, the result is not the same. So, for example, now you have this whole concept of, the murid, for example, being like the dead man with the Shaykh. That's meaning that whatever the Shaykh says, he does. The problem is, some of the mashayikh now say, well, that's very difficult maqam to be in, because if the tasawwuf is taught like that, the majority of people will not involve themselves in tasawwuf, because the people will find it very difficult amount. So here the mashayikh tasawwuf will look at the natija, the result. Then what do we want from the result here? We want someone to have suluk and become closer to Allah, so they may change their ways in that understanding. Meaning that people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they know what they're doing. For us to follow in suit and follow those people that know more than us. Now, on conduct in mosques.
Chapter 15 on conduct in mosques. You must stay for prolonged periods in the mosque with the intention of withdrawal. Itikaf, for mosques are the houses of God and the places most beloved to Him. The Prophet ﷺ has said, the mosque is the house of all those who have taqwa, and when you see a man become accustomed to stay in the mosques, bear witness that he has faith. God the Exalted has said, he only shall attend God's mosques who believes in God and the last day. And the Prophet ﷺ included amongst the 7 whom God will shade under His throne on the day when no shade shall exist save His, a man whose heart remained attached to the mosque from the moment he left until his return.
No. Here, the Prophet ﷺ, the masajid has khususiyya, that was given by waqf. That this land has been given, what we call by waqf. Waqf is that you, in a way, give this land to Allah. That this land is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in an Islamic land, you would say, buy this house, for example, and then you would say, this house, I give it as waqf to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you make an intention for that waqf, which is that this house will be used as a masjid, or this land will be used as masjid. Until the end of times, nobody can change that waqf now. Only the owner, there's discussion whether the owner has the right to change it. But in general, the owner has, this land is now a masjid till the end. Nobody can come and say now, I'm going to build a cemetery over here. This is waqf now. This is always, forever be a masjid. That's why what they did in India when they demolished the Babri Masjid and the other, it can't happen. This land remains a masjid forever. Doesn't matter if you build a temple over here. This is a masjid forever, because this land has now become given to Allah for the sake of Allah. It is owned by Allah. It's not owned by anybody now. That's why there's discussion in the UK, is because land can't be given in legal terms, as far as I'm aware, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you can't write legally a waqf. In the Islamic world, you can write a waqf. So even a masjid is in the name of what? An organization. They could potentially say, we now want to create a wedding hall here and change it and do whatever they want. Potentially it can happen. Obviously they're not going to do it. The community would say no, but it could happen. In the Islamic world, you can't do that. When you define the masjid, khalas, that's the masjid now. Nobody can take anything away from that and stop it being a masjid. But the Prophet ﷺ, the masjid is described that as in the end of times, that there will be a people, he says, Yati akhir zaman, that the end of times will come, and he describes people in the masjid. And he says that people will sit in the masjid, and he says that they will be, their dhikr, their remembrance will be hubbud dunya, or the world. That they will sit in the masajid, in halaqat, and they will be discussing the world in the masajid. And then he says, فَلَا تُجَالِسُوهُمْ, don't sit with these people, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need of them. As in, has no need of what they're engaged in the masajid. So the masajid, they have khususiyya, just like the makan, as in the place has been made specific for Allah, as in it's only Allah who owns this land. Likewise, the worship and what happens in the masajid is also should be done only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just like the place and the makan has been given khususiyya, likewise what is done in the masajid is also given khususiyya. And this is only for the sake of Allah. That anything that happens in here is not for the dunya. It's only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you're outside the masjid, You are in the dunya, and it all happens with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then you come to the masjid and you sacrifice half an hour or an hour, and you remember what you give Allah a moment before all the blessings that you receive when you're outside of the masjid, and you manage to do all the things in the world, and you leave the world outside and you don't bring it into the dunya, but you remember the blessings of Allah through which you are able to engage in the dunya. You should not sit and discuss worldly affairs in the masajid. It's a massive problem. When you come to the masjid, it's khalas, everything else put to the side. That's why i'tikaf here is your uzla, is your way of removing yourself from those areas outside. So there are sanctities and there are sanctuaries. There should be your sanctuaries that you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with in the masajid. And there should be also friendly places. There's no harm in bringing young children to the masajid because they're the future of your, this generation and the community. So again, the rulings that we listen to, na'am, they're important. The ahadith are important, but they should also be listened to and understood in a context. Likewise, so having spaces for women isn't wrong. So the fuqaha, the Hanafi fuqaha themselves, they will prefer women to pray at home because it's what? It's astar, it's more concealing, it's safer. If your wife or women folks stay at home, it's safer for them. So they're not going to come in the street. But the problem is, women folk go out anyway. They're going to go to the shop, they go buy the meat, they go everywhere, they go to the marketplace, they go travel. So there's no hope for them when they go everywhere else. But then when they say to go to the masjid, no, you can't go to the masjid, you can't go to the masjid. It's wrong, it's just men being men and having no sense whatsoever. There have to be spaces. They need also to be connected spiritually. They also need guidance. They also need to listen to durus. So if where are their spaces? Traditionally, women would have their spaces in their homes because they used to have big communities and families, and they would do their own thing. They would even have their own musallas where they would gather and do their own things. But whether you deprive them of their own musallas, you deprive them of having any spaces in their families, you deprive them of all types of and then you say, you know what, you lot don't listen to me, you lot don't do this, women are like this, women are like that. Oh, khalas, you've not provided any opportunity for them to become better. There's no education for young girls, there's nothing, there's no spaces, and then we complain that our women folk like this, or our women folk like that, the times have changed. There have to be spaces for your women folk, for your children, for the whole community in the masjid. And it becomes what we call the centrality of the whole community becomes that masjid. Just like the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, it becomes the focal point. So you have your Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you have the masjid. That you go there 5 times a day. Look, even loneliness, because it becomes such a pandemic. You're an old man, and your son's moved now and he's gone off somewhere, and your daughter's got married and you're on your own. You see old men in the Muslim world, they are not lonely. You go to the masjid, they've got their own little club at the back, they're all with the chairs at the back, and they're all, I shouldn't be chit-chatting, but anyway, they do, but they literally love it. They spend all their times in the masjid, and they come in and so and and it becomes their community center. So there's no loneliness whatsoever. Then you see kids, likewise in the Arab, the kids are running the masajid, man, do you know what I mean? And then you have people sell stuff outside of the masjid, and it's always thriving. There's always stuff going on. Whereas here you go into the masjid, my man looks at you because you're from outside town, and it's it's like in our masjid, it's like you can't even wear socks. Now mine, going to the masjid, it's like, so someone comes in and they don't know what's going on, or you're not the right race, and you look different, or you're not got a topi on. For God's sake, God forbid you go in without a topi on. You know what I mean? It's like all this stuff it's not important per se. I'm not saying it's not important to wear it's not the point of the masjid, because the masjid isn't yours. The masjid is Allah's. The point is, you do not control what happens in the masajid. There are adab and etiquette that are you should keep in the masjid. Obviously, someone's talking loudly. There's khalas, people should speak silently. But it ain't yours. Just because you're in the committee or a trustee of the masjid doesn't mean you can decide what happens in the masjid. The masjid is the place of Allah. Everyone has a say in what happens in the masjid. It's Allah's masjid, not yours. You are just what we call a khadim of that masjid. Your role is to serve the people that come to the masjid. Your role is to wash those toilets, that's it. Your role is not to become this sort of tyrannical ruler of the masjid and decide what happens and what's going on and this and that and whatever that. You do stuff because it's a waqf, it takes the rulings of a waqf, what we call endowments. So if you become Amin al-Waqf, you become someone who has the right over these waqf to uphold the intentions of that waqf. So if the masjid is if that is a masjid, you now have the responsibility of making sure this place runs as the masjid runs. So what, as in is held as a masjid, the waqf. If someone holds a property for orphans and says this place is for orphans and you become the person responsible for running that place, you must make sure that the money that comes from this place and the space is used only for orphans, nobody else. That you don't use your own, that they talk about in fiqh books that you don't then live there. As in you don't become after say 10, 20 years, people forget about it and then you move your family inside and say, oh, but you know, these are my cousins and they're all orphans, and then you start using the waqf or whatever. So you are what we call umana, you're trustees of the waqf. This is a masjid, you need to make sure it runs like a masjid. And one of the khususiyya, the peculiarities of the masjid is that it's for lillah. It's not for anybody else, it's only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It shouldn't be a place for arguments, it shouldn't be a place for the dunya, it shouldn't be a place where people are shunned and not included. It should be an inclusive place for the whole community, and its purpose should be that this is a place and for worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else. Now, he says, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, included among the seven, whose qalbuhu mu'allaq billah. That this in the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam describes that his heart is mu'allaq, means that it's hung. It's as if like he leaves his heart in the masjid. You know how you leave hang your coat in the masjid. It's like his heart is hung in the masjid. It's forever there. And so even though he's with his family, or he's buying, or he's in a wedding, or he's eating, his heart is as if he's left his heart in the masjid. And his body is outside the masjid, but his heart is always in the masjid. قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ. That he finds peace, serenity, contentment, rida, all these things in the masajid. And it can be hard to find these masajid in the West. Trust me, I know, even though I've been brought up in so many, I would say maybe a couple of masajid that you feel you can go to. Every masjid has become just like a, like a cult, you could call it. Certain types of people go to this place, and certain types of families and people go to that place, and certain type of people go to that place. That shouldn't be the way the masajid do. You should have, a part in all the masajid. So why is it that you're more connected to this masjid and not that masjid, when both are for the sake of Allah, both are masajid? Why is it that people will, even if there's a masjid closer, they'll go to the one further away because your family goes there, whatever, even though there's a masjid closer, and the masjid that's closer has a right over you itself. That, yeah, you want to go further away, that's fine, because you want to maybe walk, and that's fine, sometimes you can't, but you should also not shun the masajid that close to you, because they also have a right over you, and you should give it life to masajid that don't have a life. So these are all such that the ulama and the Sufiya and the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that don't pray in the same masajid all the time. Why? Because people, you may become you might start thinking to yourself that, you know what, I pray 5 times a day here, and everybody knows it. And the day you don't come, people might start saying to you, oh look, Fulan's not come today, he probably missed his asr today. So just to what we call, to stop that feeling that, you know what, now you're doing it for people's sake, mix it up. You sometimes pray in this masjid, sometimes pray in that masjid, sometimes pray in that masjid, just so you remove that feeling and sense from yourself that it's not for people, it's only for Allah. That this salah, you're not praying it for people, you're praying it for Allah. And because some people, what they do is that he prays first off on the left, and you know you can't pray there. And if you pray there, that's it, it's going to be like, hell's going to go all loose, because so-and-so always sit next to that radiator on the left and nobody can pray there. So they become like, something that everyone knows, this masajid lillah. that every space is, everyone is equal in the masajid. Nobody has any right over the other person, whether you're more pious or less pious or you're sinful, does not matter. The only right people have is in the first stuff, behind the imam. There should be people who are knowledgeable to stand behind the imam. Why? Because if the imam makes a mistake, he may need someone behind him to either correct him or to replace him if he needs to move. Otherwise, apart from that, everybody has right to any space in the masjid. Nobody has any other right over the masajid. No. So from the seven is a just ruler. From the seven, the people tahabba fillah, that they loved each another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they met on that love and they left on that love, and they departed and they met on that love. Again, something that doesn't exist. Meaning, do you know what that means? It means that you go and see your brother for no other reason except just because he's your brother in Islam. That's it. That's why Imam Sha'ani says that that to meet each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from the oath that you took. As in, you go and see literally a friend of yours, wanting nothing from him, just to see how he is because he's a brother of yours in Islam. This is what we call ukhuwa and muhabba, because listen, the blood of faith is way stronger than the blood of relation and your nasab and your pita. He's your brother in Islam, but even that doesn't happen. As you know, now it's like he's not my family, he's not my friend, he's not this, he's not my mosque, he goes, all of that doesn't make sense. You should go and see your brother. You've not seen in 6 months. You've not met your uncle. You've not met someone that you've not seen for a long time. Go and visit him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who gives in charity in a way that his left hand doesn't know what his right hand has gave. He also will be under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who's invited to perform adultery by someone who is beautiful and has, of someone of high stature, a woman of high stature, and he refuses out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also will be given shade by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who cried and wept on his own in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also will be given shade on the day when no shade will be given except those that are shaded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the things that we want to sort of become. These are the attributes that we want to implement within ourselves. Not the attributes of, as much as sometimes you may say things that have sense, but, the people on the internet, all these tapes and all these people, they don't represent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have a qudwa, you have an example, you have an uswa, you have a role model. The role model of yours is here, he's speaking to you right now, he's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And those people that are his inheritors, who are the ulama, who are the awliya, who are the sulaha, these are the people that you should be really having in front of you right now. You should have even one person, that you look at, you think, I want to be like this person. You look at the lives of the people before you and you think, this man is someone I have the vision to be like, whether in his ilm, whether in his taqwa, whether in his dhikr, whether in his attributes. You may not be able to do it all, but there's something that this person attracts you, that his akhlaq, his character was immense, and you know what, I'm going to be like him in his character. And that one thing, inshallah, will be the door for you into paradise. Because the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they didn't do everything. Not all of them fasted all the time. Not all of them were, charitable like Uthman and Umar and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Not all of them prayed all the time. Such Abdullah ibn Mas'ud says that I fast less because it affects me when I fast my prayer. So I fast less. Others fasted more because it affected them less. So they weren't all the same. But you need to find your niche. When you go like Amazon doing FBA, and the thing that they tell you to do is what? Find your niche product. And when you find your niche product, you can sell that because nobody else is selling that. And now you can get. You in Islam likewise need to find. There is also you have a leg in everything, but you also must find your niche. That is it the Quran? You want to become a master of the Quran. You want to memorize the Quran, and you want to connect to the Quran. Is it da'wah? Are you good at speaking? Are you good at argumentation? Are you good at learning philosophy and kalam and theology? Is it learning prophetic sciences? Is it, teaching and education and children? Or is it being a role model? Something, but do something, for God's sake. Do something. Don't be a lazy BUM. Because the men are literally doing nothing at the moment in time. When we have projects, the women will get involved, but the men, I don't have a clue what they get up to. Literally, I do not know what they do. It's either watching football, or it's sat at home, or they're on the phones, or they're in the cars, or it's like, it's a waste of life. It is a total waste of life, and I have no respect for anybody like that. You just, yeah, last week someone, a young my age, just he suddenly passed away in his car, found him dead in his car. There's a whole discussion where he's taking what, that whip thing, helium thing that people are taking nowadays. When I heard about it, I don't know if you did or not, but I didn't realize this thing was such a big thing. This what do they call it now? Huh? Yeah, but the thing though, actually, is that what it's called? Yeah, so this thing, I'm just like, what is going on? Look at the words of Imam al-Haddad and the Prophet. Why are our youth so like lost? Why are they so lost? I just don't understand. Why are they so lost and distant from the masajid? Because they don't relate to us anymore. They don't want to come to the masajid because it's boring as hell, or the old people have just like beaten them up when they went there, and now they don't want to come anymore. Sometimes we are to blame for half of this stuff. You ask some of them, they don't want to come because you know what? When they went there, they had a really bad time when they were growing up, and they don't want to go anymore. A lot of it damaged. They're damaged by the elders in the community and stuff like that, and we don't want to answer those questions that have we caused half of these problems, and they're not welcoming anymore. So spaces are important in rectification of the society, and masajid play a massive role in rectifying our societies. And so your masajid need to be up to date. Your masajid need to have imams that know how to speak, that they're educated. For God's sake, you got imams who can't even speak English properly. You got imams who still bang on about Urdu and this, and it's important, man. No young man, forget Urdu. Speak the language of the youth. Relate to them and have facilities that everyone can engage in the masajid. This is pivotal. On a Friday, you have the whole community in front of you, and the imam has every week has an opportunity to get a message across. He should be wise in getting that message across. He should be spending all week preparing what message is he going to across. But likewise, people who are involved in the masajid, do not take your imams as like, their job's not important. Pay them well. Don't pay them peanuts. Pay them good money so that you attract good, clever, intellectual people to be the imams of your communities. Why is it that our teachers and imams and masajid are run by fi sabilillah, ala barakatillah, some guy comes, give him 20k to £10 an hour to teach a child? Is that how much you take it seriously? The Quran, when Imam Abu Hanifa taught his son, the teacher taught him Quran al-Fatiha, one surah al-Fatiha, Imam Abu Hanifa gave him 100 odd dirhams or dinars or whatever, or even maybe 1,000, but he gave a massive amount of money because his teacher taught his son Al-Fatiha. Just Al-Fatiha, never mind the rest of the Quran. As in, honor the people that serve your children in society and religion and Quran. You should be having literally some of the best wages should be given to people who engage in Islamic learning and teaching, and then you'll attract the right types of people. That's why Imam Abu Hanifa says, wasi'u akmanukum. He tells his students that you make your turbans large and make your sleeves wide. Why? So people respect and honor ilm. Now, we're not some you can walk all over us. No. Now, even so, my teachers drive a good car and have a good house and look good. That's what he said. Why? So people honor and respect what you carry, which is ilm. And this community looks down on imams, looks down on Maulvis, looks down on people. No one wants to be like them. That deep down, it's the worst thing that your son could do is be like an imam or a teacher in the masjid or something like that. He's flopped, basically. He's not made it. And you look at medicine and all these things, you could be not practicing, not praying, engaging in all the wrong things, but just because he's a doctor, people will think, he's mashallah, he's deen wa dunya. the deen and dunya. Just that nobody cares. The guy, well, just because he's got a house, he's got a car, he's a doctor, people. And that guy who spent 10 years memorizing the Quran and learning and works in B&Q, he with Allah is probably of a greater standard with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if he were to make dua, Allah will listen to him. And this guy, nobody cares. Because he's going to be raised with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an alim, someone who can intercede for people on the day of judgment. Man, it's not going to be raised as a doctor, nobody cares. And don't get me wrong, it's not to say you shouldn't engage in worldly things and stuff like that, but the ilm of Allah and Sharia, what we call sacred knowledge, or ilm of Sharia, is always takes precedence over all other types of knowledge, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. This is wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This isn't man-made knowledge. This is knowledge from Allah. This is wahi from Allah. And the prophets were given wahi from Allah. And the 1400 years of scholarship was sent to preserve wahi only. That all of the engagements of Imam Bukhari to Muslim to Abu Hanifa to Shafi to Malik to Thawri to Uyayna, to all of them was to preserve wahi, nothing else. What was sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said, Inna, we protect it. Inna al-hafiz, we are the ones that protect this. It's from scholarship on the ulama, nothing else. As in, if there's no ulama, there's no wahi, there's no preservation of sharia, there's nothing is preserved. That only people like Imam al-Haddad and others, the mujaddideen, the renewers of this faith, is to protect wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The thing is, we haven't understood what that means though. We just thought, yeah, it's there in the ulama speak, it's like hadith, it's like, Quran, class, you Maulvis eat this, however, you haven't tasted and you haven't seen true scholars and true scholarship, abadan, never. If you were to see the scholars of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they don't look for money, but it's your job to venerate them. They may not want it, they may give it out, but it's your job to honor them. Why? Because they carry within them something that is greater than all knowledges, which is the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't it 23 years of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's what he received? Isn't the greatest miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the Quran? Isn't the first thing he built in Medina, Masjid al-Nabawi al-Sharif? Wasn't that what he did? Then why is it there's so much tahawun, so much like, it's just the Masjid, Maulvis, this, that, whatever. Nah, it's because the things that we take, it's what you call our attitude to life is wrong. Our attitude to life is wrong. You look at towers in Dubai and think, wow. You look at the non-Muslims and their cars and you think, wow. You look at money and you think, wow. You look at clothes and you think, wow. You look at people like Andrew Tate or women or whatever and you think, oh, he's got it all. They don't have it all. They have nothing in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we mentioned in the beginning, He lets them entertain themselves, do what you want, eat what you want. Suddenly that rope will be cut, severed. In an instant you'll die, and everything that you had was gone. And we've seen people that's happened to, who will die in the worst of states. That's why you need to engage back to the masajid. And then you can say, well, how can we help the masajid? You have to be an active role in them. You can't if you've got a problem with the masjid that you're going in, then you also need to be active. You also need to play a part in that. You also need to give feedback and your opinion and get involved and provide a service if you can provide a service. If they need help with media or tech or education or they're looking for teachers, you have to be those teachers. Why would you want your son to be taught by someone that you don't respect? Be the good teacher that you want other people to learn from. Even now, children's education now, and it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. You have masajid, you are teaching children in the containers. Like what do you call them? Like porta cabins and containers. It's like, would you let your school, if you send your child to school, would you be happy if your child was taught in school in a porta cabin, in a container? You'd be like, oh no, his school is that way. But you're alright because it's all Islamic and this and that or whatever. So when's the nasr, where's the victory from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In tansurullah yansurkum. If you give victory to Allah, He'll give victory to you. But we haven't given victory to the masajid, to the Quran, to the ulama, to ilm, to the majalis of the ulama. None of it happens. None of it happens. And I'll tell you why. Because if you were to say to your son who is really clever, if I were to say to you, make him from an alim, make him into a scholar, most people would refuse. Most people would refuse. Most people try, you know what, it's, you know, he doesn't want it, he doesn't like it. That means that he hasn't really, the love of ilm and what ilm is, you don't understand it. So most of us, we do all this stuff for the sake of money and reputation. And the masajid of Allah are the most distant places from the dunya and from the reputation of the world and the filth that we carry. They are the most distant places from that. The dunya does not enter the masajid. Lillah. The education that we do, lillah, for the sake of Allah. The ulama, lillah. Their ilm that they carry is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the masajid are like it's like this thing that you enter, where you enter the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those that have what we call filthy hearts, they will never enter the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the masajid have to be changed. The attitude that we have to be places of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give us the tawfiq to become real vicegerents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, and allow us to realize our responsibility on this earth. We have no responsibility on this earth except to uphold the flag of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing else. That in this northwest, in Manchester, in the northwest, in the UK, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll ask every single one of us, what have we done for His religion and for His sake? Working and being busy is not an excuse. That's not an excuse. It won't hold in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was too busy. You have to put your all into this because you only have one chance. And when the chance goes, it's gone. And so those who are clever are the ones who are able to take stock of themselves and say, you know what, forget it. Now's the time. I'm going to do this. And those are the people who on their last breath will be the happiest people ever. Because they'll see angels to receive them who are smiling at them and say, you know what, we've been waiting for you, yallah. And then they'll take them. Like those two students of knowledge who passed away, or one student of knowledge who passed away, and when he was seen in his grave by the undertaker, when he had a dream, and he saw him, and the men were coming in white horses, taking him in his grave. And that's what's waiting for you. That's what's waiting for you. This world, mata'ul gurur, is a delusion. It's like the Matrix. It doesn't really exist. Me and you, yeah, we see each other, but this is not our real form. Your real form you'll see in the other world, what really who you are. Are you an evil Satan or what you are? You'll see in the other world. You'll see the good things that you've stored and the bad things that you've stored, such that they say that the good things that you've done is put in like a container. Literally in the hadith it says put in like a container, and the bad things that you've done is put in a container, and then you're made to open those and see. And the bad things that you've done are like scorpions and snakes, and it'll open in front of you, and you'll see all the bad things that you've stored, and you'll see all the good things that you've stored. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know what, ilm is important. Masajid also needs to be a place of ilm and knowledge. Revive ilm and knowledge. Don't think that, oh, you know what, coming once a week or once a month for these classes is enough. Engage in it every single day. Have a book that you're reading every single day. Listen to ulama that you trust every single day. Sit with the ulama every single day. Change the perspective of your life. Tamam? Don't think that you can't do it. You can do it. You just have to forget your previous life, and that can happen in an instant. Literally, it's just a mental game. All it is a mental game, and then you shift your attitude towards, you know what, new me, new life. Khalas. And last life, old friends, is gone. And to start a new life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you the blessings of being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't see it in like sort of physical blessings, you'll definitely see it within. And you'll feel it within, as we've said. You'll feel a contentment that you've never felt ever before. And at that point, you are strong. You're not weak any longer. And that's what people don't want you to happen. That's what non-Muslims don't want to happen. Why were the Sahaba ready to die in front of their enemies? Because they had something within them that nothing could crush. They were contentment with Allah, and they were ready to die for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what we need. We need fearless warriors who fight for Islam and who can raise the flag of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not the time for weakness, it's the time for real strength. in the West, and people are waiting to be fed Islam. And if we're not going to be fed, Allah will get rid of us, and He'll bring a people who will do the job that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes these things a reality, and that He allows us to follow on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both outwardly and inwardly. Wa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam.
What advice would you give to youngsters, especially that obviously are actively involved in Masajid, for example, that want to make a change in the actual masjid, but the community members are not willing to listen or make those changes?
No, this is like the classic problem that we have. I mean, you're not going to like my answer because you might find it a bit too radical. I would just say, just get out and do your own thing. I mean, if you've tried for a long time, so first obviously you got to try, you got to speak with wisdom, and you got to try and make the effort, and sit down with them and try and get them on your side. But if you literally think that you've tried all avenues and you're not getting through to anybody, and it's not working, and you've tried your best, and literally you see there's good reasons that you need to move, or there needs to be other things happening. The only option, unfortunately, I'm not someone to say we need to make hundreds of masajid everywhere, but the problem is there's no other way apart from just doing your own thing. Even in Bolton, for example, there's so many masajid, I'll tell you right now, I can't sort of engage with any of them, because they all have problems. This one says we don't call these laws, this other says we don't do this, he says you can't do this, this guy says you can't do that. And in the end it's just like, well, you know what, forget it. We're doing our own thing, and people can benefit from us, and inshallah if you ever have a masjid, you can come to our masjid, because you stop, in the end you're stopping the work from happening. So you're stopping the work from happening. If you look at certain organizations, when they initially started the masjid, they excluded them. They didn't want anything to do with them. So they started their own thing. Now after 10 years, those same masajid are allowing them into the masjid and letting them do their thing and stuff like that. Because it's like the Prophet ﷺ, their own people generally are the hardest to convert. So the Prophet ﷺ left, went to Medina, did his thing, had another community and other people who accepted his mission, and then he came back for the victory, for the Nasr. So it's like you've not forgotten about it, but it's just like, you know what, give me 5 years, and then you'll realize the mistakes that you've made, and I'm sure you'll accept us then and allow us to do the work after that when you see what I said was correct. And it's unfortunate that you have to go around the whole thing that way, because ideally you want to be able to bring them around, but sometimes you just can't. It's impossible. Trust me, it might sound like, oh my God, but you can't. Some elders are impossible to deal with, and you could get into bigger issues if you start going at them with it and arguing with them and stuff like that. So sometimes it's like masalama, do your own thing, and inshallah other people see the light of what you're doing and join in. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but I personally feel that it's just what you have to do in this day and age, instead of wasting your time arguing with everybody and stuff like that. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Shaykh, I know you're speaking about the importance of pure food, good quality.
No.
And there's more and more studies and articles about processed food and sugar and all that kind of stuff. Now, many of us with young kids will know that even if you try not to buy this stuff, it comes into the house.
Yeah.
From family, friends, parties, or whatever, right? And if my kids ate all of that stuff, they probably have no teeth left. So I try to avoid them eating it, but what do you do with it? If I don't want to eat it, I don't want my kids to eat it. It's in the house and I can't really give it out. Say I've got half a cake or something.
Yeah. Give it to me. I mean, it's a difficult one because it is food at the end of the day. So, I mean, ideally you don't want to bring it in the house if you're not going to eat it. So you don't want to get you don't want to waste it. But I mean, if you really think it's really harmful and it's something that is not edible at all, then you'd be allowed to get rid of that. If you thought it was actually harmful, though, if you thought it was just like, oh, this isn't, it's got a bit of something I'd rather not eat, then I wouldn't get rid of it. I'd donate it or give it to somebody else that will eat it. But if if you actually think this food is harmful and nobody should eat it, then that's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you know what I mean? But, you know, I'm sure you'll find someone who'll eat half a cake though, you know, and doesn't matter, they don't mind the aspartame or the emulsifiers, you know, it's like, but yeah, it's a problem, but I think again it comes down to education, doesn't it? Because then we fail to educate our community on food ethics, and like, you know, how to eat and how to grow food and what to do. So again, when it comes to the enterprise level, then what enterprises, where are farms, where the food that we're making, what's good, you know, nothing. It's like everything comes from India, Pakistan now. It's like, even if when like, it's just not, it's not feasible. It's not, you know, long term. This isn't feasible as a community. The community has, you know, different things that fulfill its needs. Its spiritual needs are fulfilled by the masajid. Its economic needs are not being fulfilled at the moment, and its, you know, societal needs of food and water is not being fulfilled as well. So obviously, there the government should be fulfilling that, but they're not Muslims. So we are then forced to make certain decisions. So as a community, we should have food. So in the northwest, all of the northwest should have. If we could get together and create one farm or something, or create some good food, then that would be a start, wouldn't it? But the masajid can't work together. You know, the community organizations, they can't work together because everyone wants to be the person that does it and the champion that does it. So this again comes to what? Nufus and ego, and that can only be solved through ilm and sitting with the mashayikh and coming to the gatherings and purifying the self. Unless you don't do that, you'll get none of the others. So ilm becomes vital. So it has to be, and it's not one-off. It has to be what we call hamad. Like, you know, every week, every month, these things have to be hammered. You know, like there's certain topics in the masjid that you grew up with and that you never forget. Like, don't go to the other masjid, for example. You know, like in our mosque, it was like, can't bring that mosque. I'm not going into that topic, but I'm just saying something that was hammered because it was really important. So certain topics need to be hammered. Like, you know, there needs to be like, you talk about it all the time, posters, talks, events, until people get it. Oh yeah, you know what, this thing is harmful, that thing's harmful, you should be doing that, you should be doing this. So that means there needs to be a whole culture shift. And until then, you'll still be getting those cakes. But as I said, I don't mind them for now, you know. Hello, finished?
Shaykh, you mentioned in your speeches that you know, if you're the most closer to your home, it has a light over you.
No.
So obviously with like Eid coming up and Ramadan previously before coming up back, there's a lot of things about in terms of like when Eid is, when Eid shouldn't be, etc. So if the most of the house, for example, is Salafi orientated or a Saudi masjid, and you are not inclined towards that, can you then choose another masjid that you go to? That's the first question. Going on to the way with that as well, if there's two, three masjids, like you mentioned, there's in Bolton, there's like two, three different masjids. All three of them will have different timetables.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in sort of the summer period now, I mean, one masjid is now, you know, you can pray you pray about 1:30, and one is like, you can pray like, well, start time like, what, half 2, 2:45, whatever it is on these days, right? Can you mix and match your sort of timetable so that it suits your needs? For example, people have work like, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, wherever have you. So, you know, to speak for myself, like half one suits my needs, I get more sleep. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So, is that something that's permissible to change your timetable to suit your needs from different times?
First question is yes, you can. So you don't have to bring local mosque because Eid's different. Eid Salah is different, the whole mas'ala around Eid and the issue around Eid is different. You're allowed to choose what you think is best in terms of, you know, legal-wise, what you think is the correct position and praying that masjid. I'm talking more about your salah, your daily salawat, you know, like, so you can pray in any masjid that you want, but it's to say to not, to sometimes also pray in your local one as well that's close to you, to not always ignore it just because it's not big or it's not where everyone goes. It also gives that, you know, to pray salawat sometimes there as well because it's close to you. So you can pray. Eid Salah is different because Eid you have to look at what you think is correct or what you're, you know, according to your fiqh or your understanding. The second masala question was you can't pick and mix in fiqh, tamam. So you have to, you're an army, so you're a commoner. In legal terms, most of us are commoners, which is you don't know what's right and wrong. So you have to go to someone who is, is versed in these masail, who you trust and have confidence in, and ask them what is the right position on Fajr, for example. So it could be the Imam of your mosque, it could be another Imam, it could be a Shaykh somewhere, it could be a Mufti somewhere. If you don't trust that is what your mosque is doing. If you have thicker, you have confidence, you know what your mosque is doing, then that's fine. If you don't trust it, then you're allowed as an army, as a commoner, to go to someone that you trust and ask him this specific scenario, and you follow his guidance on that masala. If he says to you that the 1 or half 1 or 107 or whatever it is, because in Bolton is 107, if you follow that timetable, that's correct, and you're allowed to follow that timetable. But what you can't do is flip between timetables because of your desires. So sometimes you think, I'm going to do this, sometimes I'm going to do that. So if you want to fast, for example, you say, I'm going to follow the half 2 timetable today. You can't do that. You have to stick to one timetable. So you have to say, okay, because what you're trying to do is follow the truth. So the Imam said, well, 107 timetable is the more correct position. Follow that. That's now you have to follow that timetable. You can't then just flip just because you haven't prayed Isha and you want to just make it Fajr later now because you're running late. You can't do that. So you have to stick to one timetable. But you're allowed in the beginning, before you make your decision, to ask someone that you trust and you follow his guidance on that position, on that mas'ala. Now, most of us, it will be our local mosque. Most of us, our local mosques are run by people who we trust, otherwise we won't pray behind them. So, as in like, you go there because you trust those people. So normally, the awam, the common people, the responsibility is lifted from them. Because the responsibility is the responsibility of the imams running that masjid, or the people of knowledge. So they will make a decision, you're allowed to follow that opinion and pray in those times and stuff like that. You don't need to go any further than that as a commoner. You don't need to go on the internet and research anything. There's no responsibility on our shoulders, the common person's shoulders, of deciding whether it's right or wrong. Even on Eid, unless it's blatantly clear that the moon sighting did not happen and it was totally false, the common person isn't blameworthy. It's the people in charge who are blameworthy, who make the decisions, because it's out of your control and knowledge base. It's not for you to do that, because it causes more problems, chaos. It's the people in charge who make the decisions. So you follow the timetable of your local masjid and it says half 1, 107, it's fine. But you can't switch between pick and mix times. No. You can't pick us, you can't swap certain times as well. You pray, that you follow one at a certain time, khalas, you follow that at a certain time. No. Even if you go abroad and they follow a different Asr time, they follow, for example, you go Jordan and they follow the Shafi time, then you follow the Shafi time that they follow there. You can't then also follow the Hanafi time abroad. So whatever, if you're in a country and that's the time they follow, khalas, that's the time you follow. And then if you've decided that I'm going to follow this masjid's timetable, then you follow that masjid's timetable. You can't be like, oh well, I need to pray, I've not prayed Asr yet, so I'm for a later time, for example, today. Can't do that. You have to follow one timetable, because the whole point of fiqh is, and following a ruling is not to let your desire come into the question, the equation. So as soon as you say, I'm going to do this, that whole thing shouldn't be there. Because now you're getting into murky waters. The whole point of a madhab is that there's no desire of yours within the decision. There's no desire of yours within what's right and wrong. It's fully based on basically, knowledge. That's it, khalas. There's no desire there that, oh yeah, well I prefer this one, so I'm going to do that. So when you decide on a time and timetable, you follow that time and timetable. No. Khalas, we end here, because my voice is going. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to bless you all for coming. Jazakallah khair to Shaykh Siddiq and to those in the house for facilitating those. We're going to pray Maghrib, inshallah. inshallah, then we